Hi guys, I'm Laura Vitale. Today I'm going to show you something that's been in my family for years and years and years, and if you follow me for a long time, then you have seen me eat these before. They are my Nona's delicious preserved eggplant. I wasn't planning on sharing this recipe with you, but I mentioned on social media and whatnot that I was planning on making a few jars for Christmas, and everyone asks if I could show you how I do them. Now, what you need to keep in mind is that I usually do many batches of this. Like I usually make a really huge batch and many jars. Today, I'm only making a few jars for my dad and I for Christmas, and I'm going to show you step by step on how I make them. It's really important that you follow through and just really watch each step, because it's going to be next to impossible for me to write the recipe in detail on my website, because it's really hard to kind of measure everything. Everything is by eye and weight and all that stuff. So what I have here, the most important thing of course, is my eggplant. Now you'll see these are quite small compared to what your normal eggplant would be like in your grocery store. Normally, you know, here in the US, the eggplants are really big and they're kind of soft. Those are not the kind of eggplant you need to use for these, because there's so much sort of softness, so many seeds. Those are going to fall apart. What you need are small, tight, and somewhat firm eggplants, often known as Italian eggplants. These are what you're looking for. They should be about the size of your hand and not much wider. So these are perfect, and when I find them, I grab a bunch of them so that I can do this process. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is you need to cut and peel your eggplant. And this is how I do them. This is my Nona's method. I have never, ever changed it. I never will change it. This is the only way I've ever known how to do it, so that's just the way I do it. And then I just take a vegetable peeler, and I just peel the skins off. And the vegetable peeler works better than a knife, because you don't end up losing so much of the actual eggplant. Sometimes it'll snag, but that's okay. Just take your time and peel each one. I've got all my eggplant nicely peeled, and I have some that I've already, obviously most of it I've already prepped, and this is how I like to do it. This is how my Nona does it. You cut like circles, you cut like rings like that, and they all have to be about the same thickness, between 1/4 and 1/2 inch thick. You don't want to go too thick, but you don't want to go too thin, because if you go too thin, what's going to happen is, you know, during the process of where they're sitting in the oil and they're preserving and whatnot, they'll get really soft, and then it'll just be like a paste instead of the eggplant, which nobody wants that. And then you go ahead and you slice them into little matchsticks. Now, like I said, the only thing that you need to keep in mind that's important is that they're all about the same thickness. But if some are bigger than others, you know, depending on which side of the eggplant you cut, that's perfectly fine. And I have them in a colander. I have 2 colanders, one little one and a bigger one, because we need to press these with some salt. It's really important that you do that for several hours, because it just gets rid of any bitterness. So you add those to a colander. Got just a few more slices to go. And you can see you know, it's important that you use smaller eggplants, because they don't have all those soft seeds, because that's what's going to fall apart, and it's not going to be good. It's not going to be what you want. It's not traditional. You just don't, you know, that's just not the eggplant that you use, which is why I don't make these often, because I can't always find the right kind of eggplant. So when I find them, I grab them and I make it. Okay, this is what you will end up with. Usually I have a really big colander. Now what I have here, usually I would do this at the sink, but because I want to show you, I'm going to do this here. I've got some kosher salt. You take your kosher salt, and it's really important that you just toss your eggplant in that salt. Now I had a total of about 1/2 cup of kosher salt, and I'm probably going to end up using not all of it between these two. You just toss them like that. Then you take like a plate and something really heavy. I've got a can of tomatoes. You just put your plate on top like so, and you weigh these down, and then you pop this into your colander, and you let those sit for a few hours. I let mine sit for about 3 hours and give them a toss every now and then, and you'll start to see like brown water kind of sort of leak out of your colander, and that's what you want. I'm going to do the same thing to the small batch. I'm going to weigh it down, I'm going to let it sit for a few hours, and then I'll show you the next step. These look great. They were pressed and sitting for a few hours. Now it's time to move on to the next step. What I have here is a large stock pot, a large pan, and if you can see, I have it about, let's say 2/3 of the way or 1/3 of the way filled with water. You want to do equal parts water and distilled white vinegar. Now, this is when this recipe will vary from family to family because my mom doesn't add vinegar to hers. She just does it in water because my brother is not a really big fan of things that are really heavily flavored with vinegar. My grandma and my nonna, on the other hand, would never in a million years consider making these without vinegar, and I wouldn't either. I prefer them with vinegar so much more than just oil because just oil doesn't give me enough sort of balance. It's just kind of flat, but the vinegar is what makes these so fantastic. So I'm gonna have to wait for that to come up to a boil. Really, you just want equal parts water and white distilled. It has to be white distilled vinegar. It cannot be red wine vinegar, balsamic, no other vinegar will do. Has to be white. Then I've got some sliced garlic. These are gonna be the remaining ingredients you'll need. I've got some hot pepper flakes and some sunflower oil. You just need any clear oil. Olive oil isn't good here because olive oil has a really strong flavor, and also when you go to refrigerate these once you've opened them, olive oil will solidify in the fridge and that's not what you want. And my nonna always uses sunflower oil, so that's what I've always used. All I'm going to do is wait for that to come to a boil. I have 2 baking sheets sitting back there that have been lined with some paper towel. Once it comes to a boil, I'll show you the next step and then we'll proceed. My vinegar water mixture is up to a boil. Do not add any salt to this because remember, the eggplant is still coated in salt. Now all we do is you need to kind of work quickly. You need to add your eggplant to the boiling water. I'm going to do this in batches because I don't want to overcrowd my pan. And each batch only needs 1 minute. Now I know it doesn't sound like it's a lot of time, but trust me when I tell you it literally needs to be in this boiling water for 1 minute. When I did this once, I used really big eggplant and I let this boil for more than a minute. I think it was around 2 or 3 minutes. It ruined everything. I ended up in tears because I was so frustrated, and I made sure to never make that mistake again. So let that boil for just a minute. As you can see, I'm constantly keeping them moving, keeping an eye on the clock. And then what you do as soon as it hits that 1 minute mark, you add them onto your paper towel lined baking sheet just to absorb any extra water. Work quickly, and then it's important that you place these on a single layer, well, as much as you can in a single layer on your baking sheet with your paper towels, because what you don't want is for it to be like a big pile of them and then they'll steam and then some of them will overcook and then it's just a mess. So you need to work quickly, kind of spreading these out. If you feel like you've got too many here and not enough there, you can move them around. Woo, these are hot. Okay, and then, wow, that's some strong vinegar. What my nonna always does is you take a clean kitchen towel on top of each one and you let these cool with your kitchen towel, pressing on it like so to absorb any excess water. Once your eggplant has cooled completely, you add it all to a large bowl and then you add sliced garlic, hot pepper flakes, and some oil. At this point, you just add enough oil to get everything coated. And then what I have here are some clean jars. These are all mismatched. They're just leftover jam jars, olive jars, pickles, what have you. This is how my nonna does it. She uses mixed match jars that you just have laying around the house and you just make sure that they're really thoroughly washed, and that's what I'm gonna use too because they work really well. And they're all different sizes, which is great for me because depending on what I'm in the mood for, I can always use one big jar, one little jar, all that fun stuff. Mix everything together. You wanna make sure that that garlic is really distributed well throughout the eggplant. And then you just place them into your jars, and then you just make sure to add enough oil to cover the eggplant completely. But you see what I'm doing? I'm starting with a little bit and then moving to the next one, because you just need to be able to give the oil just a few seconds to seep all the way through those nooks and crannies of the eggplant. And that's pretty much it. You just want to make sure that you are using a clear oil. Like I said, nothing too heavy. You certainly don't want to use an extra virgin olive oil here. You don't want to use something like a sesame oil or anything. Sunflower oil is what she uses, so that is what I use as well. And all you do is just wipe off each rim. You want to make sure that each rim is well cleaned. And then you put your tops on. You have to seal them really, really well. So just put the tops on like that, and then I'll do it with a towel, just like my Nonna does. And I just take, basically this is sort of her method that I've done, that she's done for years and years, and that I've just copied. And then you just take 2 towels and you tighten them really, really securely. And then these just go in the pantry. You don't have to process them, nothing. They just go right in your pantry. They're not edible just yet. They need to have a couple of weeks minimum. I always like to eat them at the 2-week mark. They seem to be good enough for me, but the longer they sit, the better they get. Just make sure they're tightly sealed. That one was not. There we go. One last, 2 more. And that's pretty much it. And these are great. We serve them with appetizers. We serve them as a snack. We serve them in a sandwich. Just however you like to eat them is how you should eat them. Like I said, these can be used for just about anything, and they're just an absolute staple in our home. They always have been, and I think they always will be. I hope you enjoyed this process. I know so many of you wanted to see how I make my preserved eggplant. If you want to see any other videos like this, please let me know down below. Maybe we'll make some with my Nonna when I go back to Italy. You never know. Guys, thank you so much for spending time with me. I will have the recipe sort of written out on the website. It's not going to have specific measurements, because as you can see, it's kind of hard to do that, but I will have as much as I can written out, just sort of step-by-step guide. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.